Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and gentlemen, thank you for covering this important conversation this morning. We really appreciate it. My name's Jackie Needis, and I'm the CEO for your public library here in Indianapolis. And today we are sharing another very thoughtful moment in our Stand for Peace series of conversations that we're having here in Indianapolis. You might remember a couple of years ago we displayed a very poignant quilt that talked about violence. We've done the Birmingham play, we've done Kin Killing Kin, and behind me you see the Peace Dove. All of these are steps on a journey for our community to talk about violence and the fact that there's way too much of it at the end of the day. And we cannot talk about this nearly enough. Clearly the violence is not it is not lessening, and it is impacting more and more of us every day. We'll have a couple of activities this week in this regard. The most visible one right this second is this astonishing display, quiet, powerful display of shoes behind me. This is provided by the Survivors of Violent Death Support Group. We'll hear from them in just a moment. The 135 pairs of shoes represent the loss of 135 homicide victims this last year. And sometimes the number 135 might not have a lot of impact on you until you stand by this exhibit and you momentarily reflect that that's 135 people who are spiritually standing there in front of us, and we have their shoes to think about. Here at the library, we do like to continue these conversations, as difficult as they may be. Tomorrow evening, we're going to have a public forum on domestic violence and sexual assault here at Central Library. This is going to be put on by the Domestic Violence Network of Central Indiana from 6 until 8 tomorrow evening. Another important opportunity to talk about the impact of violence in our society. But this morning, I'd like to bring in a couple of other people forward if I could. Our next speaker, I give her so much praise for her strength of character to be able to come and talk with us today. We can hope to educate and raise awareness, but no matter what we do here at the library, it is not the same as sharing a personal story, something that has really struck your heart. And the emotional journey that Stephanie Rayder has been on is one that many of us could not even comprehend. Stephanie has seen violence close at home. She is the mother of a crime victim, and we know that the family who is left behind are victims as well. A mother and a grandmother, she has experienced more than her share of loss. In 2011, her son, Joseph, was the victim of a homicide here in Indianapolis. He was 30 years old and left behind a son and a fiancé, a father, sisters, brothers, all the family members that we can imagine. And each year, Stephanie has taken the pain and the sorrow and turned it into proactive initiatives to try to help the rest of us understand that this kind of violence has got to stop, and the victims of this kind of violence need all the love and support that we can provide to them. So at this point, I'd like to invite Stephanie Rayder up to the microphone so she can tell us a little bit more about her story. Stephanie?
Good morning. My name is Stephanie, and I am the mother of a homicide victim. On March 26th of 2011, my son, Joseph David, was murdered. This act of senseless violence caused great pain to Joe's entire family. We could not breathe. It not only affected his family, it also affected his friends, our co-workers and neighbors, the community that we live in, the church he was attending. One act of violence can finger out and affect many people. The senselessness of violence will devastate and leave the victim's family with a pain that most could not imagine. When Joe's family came home that horrible night that he was murdered, the first thing we saw when we walked in the door was Joe's big size 12 work shoes with the mud still on them sitting by the door. Those shoes were a very painful reminder that Joe would never wear them again. We are here today at this beautiful library in Indianapolis for a shoe memorial. 135 shoes that represent the 135 men, women, and children that lost their lives last year because of a senseless act of violence. When I look at these shoes, I see the victims, and then I see the loved ones who were left behind. If all the people that were affected by the murders of the 135 people that these shoes represent were standing here with us today, this beautiful library would be filled with people from our community from top to bottom. And that is just from the last year. Every year is a new year with different victims and loved ones left behind. It is important to share this display with our community and for us to publicly recognize so many homicides occurring in our community and how those homicides have an ongoing effect on the people left behind as well as our entire community. These shoes, they represent people who were murdered, and they include every race and culture in the city of Indianapolis. And only when we come together at an event like this do we have an opportunity to heal as a community, and I take comfort from that process. We are so lucky to have the staff at Legacy House who provide free counseling by trained professionals and the Violent Death Support Group headed by IMPD's Victims Assistance. I found with the help of the staff of Legacy House that my family and myself did not have to go through this alone. They were especially helpful with Joe's child. He was afraid and grieving. Legacy House is a special place for children with professionals trained to help them. It is important to show the community what 135 people who have lost their lives to homicide look like so that we can feel empathy towards the people who are left behind and offer them words of encouragement and a hope of healing. Everyone who has lost a loved one to homicide in our community has a story, and I am part of it. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
Thank you, Stephanie. My name is Michael Hurst. I'm the Executive Director of Legacy House. We really appreciate Stephanie and other members of the Survivors of Violent Death Support Group being with us today. I next want to bring up Marion County Prosecutor Terry Curry, and we could go on and on and on about Prosecutor Curry, but I just want to tell you one very quick story. Last year, about this time, we recognized the Marion County Prosecutor for the support that he provides to victims of violence, and we gave him a plaque on Monument Circle. And the very first thing that the prosecutor said after thank you was, but this really belongs to the advocates on my staff who work with victims of violence day in and day out. We have a prosecutor in this city who cares very deeply about victims of violence. Terry.
Thank you, Michael. This display is a visual, powerful, gut-wrenching reminder that we lost 135 of our citizens last year, from the tiniest of infants to adults. It's an unfortunate reality of our office that we have probably met with the family, acquaintances of every single individual represented here in this display. And from our office's perspective, the focus tends to be upon the defendant, the individual that we are prosecuting who has committed the crime, as it should be. But as Michael has mentioned, it is also a priority of our office to see that we serve the victims of those crimes. Our advocates, 9 full-time advocates last year, provided counseling and services to over 10,000 victims of crimes and families of victims of crime. And it is a priority that we provide solace to them, to get them to the service, such as Legacy House, the Julian Center, and the other organizations in town that serve those needs. And so I welcome everyone this week to participate in the activities, not only today, but the activities all week, so that we as a community can continue to embrace those who have been victimized, such as Stephanie and the thousands and thousands of others who need our help and need our comfort. Thank you for being here.
We have just a few more people to bring up. The next person I want to bring up is Sherry Kelly. Sherry lost her daughter, Marissa, to homicide several years ago. She's a member of the Survivors of Violent Death support group. She is the lead person with that support group who helped organize the exhibit that is behind us, that'll be here for several days. And she has a special presentation she would like to make. Sherry?
Good morning. I'm glad that you all could come here and recognize what 135 pair of shoes represent to this community that we lost to violent crime. 135 individuals to murder. But it is my deep honor to present an award for Joe Solanke. Joe has been a member of our community for many, many years. And I was talking to his wife just a few minutes ago. And Joe and his wife have done a remarkable job in this community by doing vigils, by going out to the community where the murdered victims have felt. They've anointed, they've blessed, they've embraced the community, they've embraced the families, and they hurt for the victim that has died. It takes a man of great honor to continue doing this for so many years. I've been blessed to know him. It is my honor to have him as a member of our community. I give to you, Joe.
I feel honored and blessed to be part of this group that honors the families of those who've been murdered on our streets of Indianapolis. It hasn't always been easy to be at these sites where a murder has taken place. And yet I know that it's important that this takes place. And so I want to thank you for this honor of being here today. Thank you. Thank you.
I tell people that Indianapolis is a community that is rich with resources to help people who are at risk, to help people that are in need. And I think the most valuable resource, the richest resource we have, we're standing in. It provides an opportunity for people to look for work. It provides an opportunity for people to look for supportive services. It provides an opportunity for people to develop in ways that they otherwise wouldn't have. And for this resource, for the Indianapolis Marion County Public Library and for Central Library to host this exhibit, as it's hosted other exhibits previously like Kin Killing Kin and that beautiful peace dove that's behind us, to go along with what Jackie said, that's an extraordinary thing and helps us carry forward with a community conversation about things that are very difficult to talk about. And Jackie, for that reason, for all that you've done at Central Library for the community, we'd like to also present you with a plaque to recognize your support for victims of violence.
Mike, thank you very much for that recognition. I have to tell you, the power of Joe's message just a moment ago is not lost on me. I don't know how many of you have ever attended one of those vigils where a violent death has occurred. I have. Back when I was on the City County Council, I attended several of those in the part of the city that I represented, and it really does choke you up just to even recall the power of that hour spent in a circle of prayer with candles, with people you don't even know that well, all reflecting on the pain that once again impacted a family and a community. We have work to do here in Indianapolis. Much work to do. And if our public library can help with that work, we are all about it. I want to commend our staff, Mike Williams, the manager here, Susan Davis, who is, and Tony Radford, who have organized so many of our good programs on this. We are anxious to do all that we can to encourage the conversation, to encourage the exploration of how we get to a more peaceful life, and to be a place where people can come together in safety to explore and try to find the peace that we are all looking for. So thank you for this recognition. We will continue to do all we can do to support those of you who are on the ground, out in the community, dealing with these challenges every single day. Bless you. Okay, all right, all good.
It's just the program is ending, but the exhibit will be here all day and all night, and all day and all night tomorrow. And to my left, your right, there is a guest book, and we would encourage everybody here to sign the guest book, write a personal message, and enjoy remembering 135 individuals who were victims of homicide, and help us change the community conversation about victims so that we can engender the empathy that we need to engender and so that we can heal as a community. Thank you all for being here.
Realistically, we face very serious problems at the moment, and there are not any easy answers that are going to change the culture, as you say, overnight. But I think, as we continue to talk about public safety and the steps that we need to take as a community to address these problems, that in the long run, I think we're headed in the right direction, and to minimize the possibility that our citizens in the future are going to be symbolized by this sort of display.
There's so many in the community of Indianapolis, or a sexual assault victim, or a domestic violence survivor. Whatever violence you've experienced, Legacy House can provide one-on-one counseling for as long as you need it, absolutely free of charge. We also facilitate group counseling sessions as well. We have 135 pairs of shoes behind us, and they represent 135 victims of homicide in Indianapolis in 2014. And whenever we talk about crime and crimes of violence and victims, and just looking at thinking about 135, if you just think about the number, it's just a number. Pretty soon you get desensitized to the impact of violence on families and on victims. But when you can visualize the narrative behind the number, that every one of those individuals who was a victim of homicide left things behind, things like shoes, things and people behind, people like their children and their mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and pastors and educators, and then you start to see how violence can ripple out into a community and infect the entire community. Doing an event like this and the other events this week is a way for us to let victims know they've got rights, but they also have opportunities to heal, and that we as a community can change the narrative, John. We can stop talking about what victims did that might have encouraged their victimization, and instead have empathy for the victims and for the family members and for the community that needs to heal.